From the Great Rocky Mountains with photographers from all over the world, you are listening to the Rocky Mountain Photography Show. I'm your host, Jeff Futter, and thank you for listening. This is episode 15, and one that I'm really excited about. We're going to do a show today about film photography. We've got Liz Copan, Brandon Diaz, Lewis, Matthew Eric Litt, and Nolan Septer. All right.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, I always like to start out by just having everybody kind of introduce themselves and what they have to do with photography. So, Brandon, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So my name is Brandon Luis Diaz. I am from Park County, Wyoming now, originally from Atlantic City, New Jersey, but I live in Park County, Wyoming, kind of right outside of Yellowstone. Let me see. As far as photography goes, I've always liked taking pictures. When I was like in high school, middle school, I was always the kid at the party with the camera type thing. But no one ever really explained to me that I could make a career out of it. So it never occurred to me that it would be a job or a career. So fast forward to my 20th birthday, and one of my best friends got me a photography book. It was actually one of Neil Preston's books. Neil Preston was Led Zeppelin's photographer. He did other people too, Hendrix, The Doors, like all the classic rock gods. So anyway, she got me his book, and it was just exclusively Led Zeppelin photos. And I was like blown away. I thought the pictures were just incredible. And that was somewhat of a tipping point for me, I guess you could say, because that was when I realized maybe I want to do something with this. Maybe I want to be a photographer, because I would love to take pictures like this and have them in a book, take pictures of rock stars and things like that, I didn't get my first actual camera, like pro grade camera, until I was 25. And it was a wrap from there. It was film, actually, oddly enough. My very first camera was a film camera, first pro grade film camera. It was a Canon EOS. What the hell was it? It was 650, EOS 650 film. Yeah. Took wonderful photos. I still have it to this day. And this is back in 2008. So about 17 years now, 17, 18 years. And I guess, the rest was history. I just kept taking pictures initially of my friends, their kids, and then it very quickly evolved into other things. Me getting paid to do it. And fast forward to 3 years ago, I decided to really, really, really try to go hard with it and make it a full-time thing. And I went back to school for it. So I went and got my degree in photography from Northwest College right here in Powell, Wyoming. And we were just speaking about it a moment ago, I just graduated with that degree this last May. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from here.
Liz, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, I'm Liz Copan. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but I have been in Colorado for about 20 years now. And I first got into film, I'm pretty sure it was back in high school. It was all the lunch breaks that were in the dark room. And rather than socializing with actual human beings, it was, the safety of the dark room and really just sort of watching everything come to life in the developer trays. And I never really aspired to be a photographer per se. I actually got my undergraduate degree in ceramics, but I got a minor in photography because I actually needed somebody to photograph my artwork. A lot of reflective surfaces with ceramics and everything. And this was on the days of slide film when you had to submit slides to different schools or to shows. And so it was really crucial to have your lighting totally dialed in. So I spent so much time taking all these lighting classes that I had a minor in photography when I graduated from art school. And rather than making money from doing ceramics, as I thought was going to be the case, I now make money doing photography. And I've been doing it for professionally for 20 years now. Yeah. Really miss working in film. And I really hope that they don't drop those programs from schools because, that's really when you can get in and learn to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, my name's Matt Litt. I am a photojournalist, and along the way, I've done weddings and family reunions and a lot of corporate work and advertising work and of anything that paid the bills. I started same deal. I was in high school and I got my first rangefinder camera, a Yashica GSN. And my first frame of film, I was a photo of my sister's Maine Coon cat sitting up on a fence post. And I heard a voice in my head that said, "This is what you're going to do the rest of your life." And I've cursed it ever since. Not really. And so I started professionally really in like 1980, 81 as a photojournalist while I was getting a degree in photojournalism. And jump forward, I started teaching film and darkroom for Colorado Mountain College in 95. Taught a documentary class and was asked to take over the Photo 1 and Photo 2 program the next semester and began my teaching pathway. Um, and I can't think of the numbers of students I've taught over the years. Taught film and darkroom right up through 2010 or 11 when the program sort of died out and transitioned over to teaching digital. And I still teach for CMC, fully online now, teaching digital. But it is nice to see that the main program over in Glenwood Springs they're still teaching film and darkroom. Um, and one of my students is here tonight, Nolan Septer. Nolan, you took a digital class with me, I think,
Yeah.
10 plus years ago now. And I wanted Nolan to be here because Nolan is very actively shooting film, doing amazing double exposures in camera,
Mhm.
and a very unique approach to it. And he's got a really good online presence for his Instagram. And it's just nice to see a younger generation preferring film over digital and excelling at it. So, Nolan, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, guys. I'm Nolan. I'm from Iowa originally, but been in Colorado like 12 years or so. And yeah, my first class was 2014 with Matt at CMC. And then, yeah, I mean, I shot digitally for like probably like 10 years. And then the last 3 years, I've been pretty much doing all film for the most part. Yeah.
Hmm.
And Matt did send over your Instagram to me, and I was pretty impressed. So, a little bit about me. I've been doing photography as long as I can remember. I was probably 3 or 4, and I'd sneak my dad's camera out of his camera bag and take pictures and get in trouble. And that's where I started, of course. And I was probably 6 or 7 when I got my first actual camera, which was just a film, just a point and shoot camera. About 10 when I got my first, it was a fully manual Canon rangefinder camera that was my grandma's that I learned everything that I know now about shutter speed, ISO, f-stop, everything else like that. But yeah, I think that it is exciting that there are groups of people that have dedicated themselves to preserving film pretty much like the film photography project. And there's also a podcast that they have, the film photography podcast, which I do enjoy listening to from time to time. I listen to all kinds of photography podcasts, so if you need something to listen to, you can always hit me up and I can fill you in on several different podcasts. But that's a little bit about me, and I've kind of well, I switched to digital when I was 16. I bought my first digital camera, and I've been doing digital for quite a while now. But I do still have, I don't even know off the top of my head how many film cameras, and I do still shoot film from time to time, and I enjoy it. It's always fun to go out and shoot film and not exactly know what you're getting and until you get your film back. or you develop it yourself, which I don't have a dark room, but I did develop film in a dark room when I was in high school. That was always fun as well. I've been shooting with film from the Film Photography Project. I've been playing around with their ultra low ISO negative film, which is about 6 ISO, which is a lot of fun for shooting things like clouds and things like that that have any kind of movement to them that you don't need to use a ND filter. You have ultra low ISO. So, what is everybody's favorite film to shoot with?
Me, I love 4x5. I think it was you, Liz, who mentioned, it may have been you or Matthew. One of you guys mentioned or made a comment about taking film classes out of schools, out of like photography degrees, and I can say with absolute certainty they didn't take that out of my program. The program I attended at Northwest College. Not only did we have a total of 16 photography related classes in this degree program, which is a lot, but a handful of them, 5, I think, total, were based around film. And there was one in particular that was based around 4x5 film, which was my favorite by far. I mean, we did it in the studio, outdoors. I mean, even in the beginning of that course, we didn't even start out with the actual, your 4x5 camera, good quality, I'll call it, for lack of better terms, like the one, like the accordion style, you know. We had a box with a hole drilled in it, and we would just lift up the thing, and the light would come in, and that's how we learned how to do it. And then we eventually upgraded to a high quality 4x5 camera. But yeah, like I said, we did it outdoors, we did it inside, we worked in the studio with it, did portraits, landscapes, a little bit of everything. And because our freshman year we learned how to develop film in the darkroom as well, we also learned how to develop 4x5 film, which is slightly different, but not too much different from developing like 35 millimeter film. But that was, yeah, my long-winded answer of basically saying that was my favorite by far. Just the quality and the precision of 4x5 film, and it's in my opinion superior.
How about you, Nolan? What do you like to shoot with?
If I'm doing black and white, I have 35 millimeter, but I'll do like Tri-X if I'm doing black and white, but I do a lot of color as well. Matt likes the Tri-X.
And how do you do your double exposures? Do you have a camera with a double exposure setting? Which
Yeah.
I've had some of those where there's just a little switch and then you wind the film and it just cocks the shutter instead of winding the film and does that, or do you actually hold the rewind when you advance the film?
Yeah, I have a FE, and yeah, it has the little notch double exposure mode thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but Nolan, you're also doing long exposures, capping the lens and moving it around, right? Talk about that, because that's just the coolest stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was doing a while ago. But yeah, like, because I had a Sony and it didn't have the double exposure mode. So yeah, I would do long exposures with neutral density filters and then cover the lens cap and move it and uncover it. And then, so yeah, I was doing a lot of it like that. And that was cool to mess around with for sure. It's not the easiest way to do it.
I think one of my absolute favorite cameras of all time is the Minolta XE7, which has a little dial where you can little knob where you can flip it and then wind the film, and it just cocks the shutter instead of winding the film, so you can do double exposures that way, and that was always pretty neat to play with. What about you, Liz? What do you like to shoot with?
I love both black and white as well as color. I mean, it's of course more difficult to develop your own color film. Um, that's actually what I learned to do was develop the actual color film. And that was really tricky. As far as color film, I love my Fujifilm 160 NPC. That is a beautiful, beautiful portrait film. I also love my black and white because that I feel like is just a lot more multi-purpose for more of like photojournalism, that kind of stuff. And when I'm out and about shooting black and white, I'm a big fan of the Ilford HP5, and then also, the Kodak Tri-X. That's a nice one that I like. And oh, yep, yay! I also found this one too, so it's nice to Nice to get all these.
100 feet that expired
Right.
in 2012.
Yeah, but also with the film that has expired, it's really fun that we can get some really fun color shifts, some interesting stuff that's going on with the chemistry there. So just to be able to experiment with things that are past their expiration date, I'm actually I'm really looking forward to doing more of that this year because I used to keep everything locked down tightly in my refrigerator and over many moves and stuff, maybe things got out of the cold storage. But I don't mind too much, especially if it's not a commercial shoot. If I can experiment a little bit more and take my time and really play around with some of those different colors, I really think the color shift is going to be fun this time around.
And what about you, Matt? What do you typically use?
Uh, Tri-X. I started my career shooting Tri-X film, and came to just love the look of it. And even after they introduced the T-Max with the T-grain technology, I still preferred Tri-X because the grain had become a signature part of my look. In college, I was handed down kind of a family recipe for taking Tri-X and pushing to 1600 and getting just phenomenally tight, contrasty grain, not having it block up like Rodinal and some of the other developers. It was Edwell FG7 and just a shitload of let me start that. Beep. Edwell FG7 and a bunch of, well, almost 3 ounces of sodium sulfite. And you would just let it sit for 17 minutes with like 3 agitations the whole time. And that, for me as a photojournalist, that opened up a phenomenal world of possibilities of shooting low natural light. And I learned to start responding to that low natural light. Uh, so that's always been a favorite. And then moving forward in my career, I had to start shooting slide film and color negative film and dealing with color materials. But yeah, closest to my heart will always be the Tri-X.
Have any of you ever experimented with using caffeine or coffee or vitamin C or anything like that in the darkroom?
Every morning. Oh,
I found a I found a fascinating article online about that you can actually use coffee, tea, or vitamin C. It's an old Shutterbug article,
yeah.
and I always wanted to try that, but never have. And there's actually the whole article is I just sent over in chat, so you can take a look at if you want. But it's something I'm probably going to try to do at some point, just because I think it's kind of interesting.
I've never done it. What does it
Yeah.
do?
Just develops a film. It
Oh,
it works as a developer agent.
oh,
Mhm.
Yeah, I've never played with I was always kind of, as a photojournalist, I was really sort of boring and didn't do, my earliest experimentation was in junior college and I was smoking a ton of pot. And I can say that now. Um and was doing a lot of funky darkroom madness. But once I hooked into realizing that I was a photojournalist, my work went really pretty straightforward. Because I had a shot in the camera that could still be ruined in development, and so you didn't mess around. You just kind of towed the line and didn't get creative on that. So.
Yeah, that also
What
resonates with me a lot, what you just said. Because, if you have a client that you're working with, I mean, you need to get that shot. And you don't have a lot of time to just play around and be creative, which is why having personal projects and time to spend on other things that are not so deadline based is really helpful for, the creative eye to be able to, take the coffee, take the citric acid or whatever it is, and really just try and get in there and play with some stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I shoot a ton of, well, I used to shoot a ton of Holga toy camera photography. That's I started doing that 30 years ago. Yee, I'm the old guy in the bunch. And and the Holga was, the Holga was an opportunity for me to let go of expectations. I My career at that point was shooting chromes and doing advertising photography and architectural photography, and everything just it became such a technical endeavor that it really burned me out. It paid the bills, but it burned me out. And I discovered the whole toy camera, and it was like this opportunity to just not know. And I was running all sorts of different kinds of film through that. And the camera itself was the potential culprit in whether or not your images came out. And even then, my development was pretty straightforward. Um, but but the thing with film is there is a certain level, regardless of what kind of film you're shooting and what you're running it through, that there's a little bit of letting go of expectations because you don't know.
Well, it's kind of similar with me. I've experimented quite a bit with like the cheap Kiev 60 120 film camera and the what was it that it was the Pentacon 6 that it was based on, which was actually a cheap copy of the Pentax 6x7, I think. But those were kind of iffy as to what your results were going to be because there was always some kind of light leak or something with the something going on with them that would mess up your pictures almost every single time because they were cheaply built in the Soviet Union. But yeah, that's kind of the same thing there, and it is fun to just kind of get out and experiment a little bit without any kind of expectation.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for just the humble Polaroid camera, which, before we were working in digital, your Polaroid was all that you had to figure out if your lighting setup worked, if your exposures were totally on point, all those little disposables with the, your little Polaroid, that's essentially chimping on the back of your screen.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss that because I see so many photographers wherever I go kind of lose themselves because they're kind of checking the back of their screen, looking for, seeing it. Okay, did I nail the shot? Did I get this? And with the film, it really is just that magic and the alchemy when you're in the dark room and you can finally see it and going like, yes, I nailed the shot, or well, looks like I biffed on that one too. So the not knowing, I think, is really beautiful.
That's I haven't thought of that in years, but I had a special back. I had one film body dedicated to a Polaroid film back. Stupidly expensive. And you would do your lighting setups and everything and pop some roids. And even then it was this translation. You had to translate the ISO, which involved math, which sucked. And then you really like you and you'd pull this roid and you'd look at it and go, well, okay, something happened. I think it's okay. And then you'd shoot your film and bracket. And I sold mine off a bunch of years ago. But yeah, it was just that's what we had for testing.
Mhm.
Chimping is actually a term I learned from Brandon.
Yeah, that's right. I remember talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I learned that from one of my professors, Anthony Polver, at Northwest College. He taught us that in one of our film classes. Yeah.
yeah. I encourage my students to not do that.
Hmm.
And throw away your lens caps, except for you, Nolan. You need yours. But nothing stops a photograph like a lens cap, number one. And then and I can't think of the numbers of times I've seen photographers miss a photo because they were chimping.
Yeah.
and something happening right in front of them. And one that I remember that still cracks me up, it was an NFL game. I think I was just watching it on television, and the play was to the corner, and it was this amazing pass and this amazing catch, and there was a photographer there with a camera around his neck with an obvious wide angle lens, and all he would have had to do was just pick it up and click, and he would have had this phenomenal image because of where and how everything occurred right in front of him. But he was looking at his camera. He
Hmm.
was looking at the back of his camera, and I thought, you you just totally missed the shot, you
Yeah.
know. So and it's like you either get the shot or you don't. And so if I can teach my students to stop looking at the back and treat it like film in that regard of 36 exposures, you don't know what you've got until you develop it,
Yeah.
you
And you
know.
only have to look at it once to see, okay, my settings are obviously right. So you don't have to look at it after every single picture you take. You can,
Right.
you'll know that
Yeah.
your settings are correct if you just look at it once and then shoot.
And I mean, that's the beauty of a film camera, you know. It's like you just don't know, but you always knew. I always knew when I had the shot. For me as a photojournalist, when something would be happening in front of my camera, and I would just like right at the right moment, and I'd get this charge through my fingertip, you know. And it was funny because the very first thing that I would do when I thought, oh man, I got it, the very first thing I'd do is check my rewind knob and pray there was tension on it. Like, because that's the way to check to make sure there's actually film in the camera. And I would teach all my film students that trick. And I got in the habit of, oh man, I know I got the shot, and I would reach up and check, which is kind of too late at that point. But it became this weird little tick or habit of mine is to check that rewind knob for tension. Ah, okay, there's film in the camera, you
I
know.
learned
So
that pretty quick after I got my first rangefinder camera because the first roll of film I shot, I didn't have loaded correctly. So I had all these pictures that I thought were going to be amazing. And of course, I was so disappointed that I didn't have any
yeah,
film in the camera, but it was a good learning experience.
yeah.
But at that age, I think it was film was always, always expensive, and so my parents were a little bit frugal about how much film they'd get me, but they'd always get me the 4 packs of focal film from Kmart. So that's what I would always shoot is the focal film from Kmart.
Awesome.
It's funny you mentioned Kmart because one of my first jobs when I was in high school was a 1 hour photo developer.
Hmm.
And you get to see a lot of different film, a lot of everything. Um,
Oh
but
yes.
and actually, I think that was right before that Robin Williams film came out, 1 hour photo.
Yeah.
And it was just a really interesting time to be able to just realize that when you're developing other people's films, if you cook something, you're gonna who knows, you might be ruining somebody's wedding, somebody's family pictures, something. So having the chemistry set properly was a little high pressure, but so in that sense, I'm kind of glad that some things have gone digital because the margin for error, as you were saying, I think we've all been there shooting the roll of film that is not loaded properly, or you unload it and expose it, or when you're trying to load up the reel in the dark room, something doesn't work properly or it gets caught and you end up like tearing some of the film. And I mean, a lot of those are really desirable traits right now that people are trying to replicate. But I think that it's fun to kind of go back and re-experiment with that kind of stuff. What are you guys doing in terms of like innovation with film?
I
Hmm.
think Nolan's got to speak to that, man, because he's doing something that I'd never seen before,
Yeah,
and
I
that
looked
was
through Nolan's Instagram and it's pretty impressive. I think everybody definitely should.
I don't know. I just got obsessed with double exposures. Like, I just keep doing it. I don't know what's going on, but
So humble about it.
and my next thing is actually going to be wet plate collodion, and I'm going to start doing double exposures and stuff like that with the wet plate stuff.
Hmm.
I took a
Yeah.
workshop recently and
Yeah.
gonna invest in all that at some point. Yeah.
Very cool.
I actually have
What?
to go though pretty soon.
Okay, Nolan, before you
Yeah.
do go, can
Yeah.
you tell everybody where we can find your work and where all the listeners can go to see your work and if they want to get a hold of you with any kind of questions or anything like that, if they can do that?
Yeah, my Instagram is just my name at Nolan Septer, or my website has way more. Like nolansepter.com would be. Yeah, that has everything on it.
And can you spell out that for me?
Yeah, NOLANSEPTER.com. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it was really good talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
Um,
you
Your
got it.
work is definitely inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. See you guys. Thank you.
You
Cool,
bet.
Nolan. Be seeing you soon down here.
Yep, I'll see you soon, Matt.
Yeah, right on.
Bye.
Cool. Thanks for allowing that impromptu visit, Jeff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a lot of it was good. Glad I was able to have him on. As far as me innovating with film, I think just like I said, I'm shooting with this ultra low ISO stuff, and it's got some pretty cool um I got some pretty cool photos from it just because it's I mean your shutter speeds are obviously going to be so long with it and it just makes for interesting photos.
what type of photos do you do with it? Are you doing astrophotography or stuff at night, or to use that low of an ISO? I'm curious as to what your subject matter is.
Yeah.
Nature, always nature photography. I really like the effect that it gives on clouds. Let me send over a picture here. This is
And Jeff,
one that I
where,
did.
where can we see your work?
www.wyophotos.us. That's wyophotos.us. And I just sent over a picture in chat that I took with this film that you can kind of see what it does to the clouds. And this particular picture I really like because the lines that go through the rock just kind of continue throughout the clouds, and it's just kind of cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
For that to load.
That's really, really cool.
Oh, wow. Sweet.
Yeah. So, for the people who cannot see the screen right now, would you mind describing the image?
It some rocks in the background, some cliffs that have some lines going through them, and then those lines kind of continue through the clouds. The clouds are essentially lines because of the slow shutter speed, and that was
Wow.
Do you notice that you get more tonality with that low of a film speed? Do you notice there's like more contrast in your
yeah,
lights and
I think
darks?
so. I think there is more contrast for sure. Unfortunately, this one, for example, instead of scanning, I have an attachment on my camera that I use to take a picture of the negative and then invert it. So a lot of that gets lost in the digital conversion. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool to shoot at that kind of low ISO. And I think it's pretty cool that the film photography project who manufactures this film is around that is trying to keep it alive. And you can buy this stuff on B&H Photo for $10 a roll.
That's awesome. I know one of the big issues that we've had is just different manufacturers going out of business and chemicals being discontinued and film stock being discontinued. So you normally get your film B&H, or is there a local place
Yeah,
that you have?
I get it from B&H and then I send it to thedarkroom.com for processing.
That's great.
And to save money on that particular roll, I did not have them scan them. You can have them just send just the negatives, and then I can take pictures of the negatives or scan them or do whatever I want with them. So, unfortunately, I don't shoot film as much as I'd like to. I get inspired once in a while, and I buy a bunch of film, and then I go and shoot it, and then it'll be 6 months, a year before I shoot another roll of film.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I like, I like to, I mean, I like experimenting, but I really like having a consistent vision, or at least a consistent outcome from my vision. And that was something where the Tri-X became so key to my look. And shooting it at 1600 became its own really key signature look to it. Uh, and I really lost that when I started doing consumer photography and doing weddings. I would commit to shooting black and white, but it was Portra 400 BW.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was limited to having it at 400, which was realistically 200 ISO, ASA, whatever. And I'd have to pop flash into it. And so I couldn't respond to that low light, natural light vision that I was so good at. And that was such a shame. And I actually found it again when I went digital. My first digital was a Fuji S2, and it produced the most amazing 1600 speed files. And I was able to go back to shooting low natural light and having that look appear in my work. Um, and and that was that I went Fuji on digital first because of that, and I didn't need high motor speed, or anything like that. And I dyed in the wool Nikon, and Nikon just wasn't up to snuff yet on their ISO. Um, and and that Fuji, man, when I was able to shoot at 1600 again, it was like, oh man, this is just like Tri-X and Edwell. I can shoot my vision again. So for shooting the film, I kind of running into the same problem now, is because so much of what I do is low natural light. So much of what appeals to me is low natural light, and I can't get it with a regular roll of 400. Um, and I'm trying to not reach a point where I want to set up a dark room. Um, Even though I'm all set up for developing film, metal reels, metal tanks, 100 feet of Tri-X and 20 cassettes. I'm set for the Armageddon when digital cameras don't work. Uh,
We know
Literally,
who to talk
actually,
to.
it is why I bought this. Um, and it expired in 2012, so I guess that end date. Anyway, so it gets tempting to say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start shooting and processing Tri-X again. And of course, the irony of it is that yes, it ends up getting digitized on a digital camera. And that's a little bit sad, but it is how we show our work now. So
And one thing you said that definitely I think is one of the most important things in photography in general, whether it's digital photography or film photography or anything else, wet plate photography, is visualization. I think is probably the key to photography.
yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, Brandon.
No, you're
Could I
fine.
jump in on this? Um, in 2012, I think it was, I was asked to edit a manuscript for a textbook. And it's a guy who used to be one of the editors on the Upton and Upton books, that I learned out of. Um, and he so it's a digital photography text, and he wanted to feature my Holga toy camera images. And I thought, well, that's bizarre. Why would you want to feature my Holga work in a digital photography text? And he said, in one of our conversations, you made a comment that has stuck with me, that it's when your Holga toy camera stuff started winning international awards, you realized that it wasn't because of what you had shot it with, it was about the image itself and the strength of the image. And I think that's a really important lesson to teach students, that it always remains about the image, regardless of what you've shot it with. The image is what's important,
Mhm.
unless it's an iPhone. Had to do that.
I don't understand why people think a better camera is going to get them better pictures. I've never really understood that, but a lot of people have this idea that if they spend $5,000 on camera gear, their pictures are automatically going to be as good as somebody who, is a professional photographer. But you can buy if you play music, and I don't know why I keep using this analogy because I don't play music, but if you play a guitar, or I shouldn't say if you play it, if you don't play a guitar and you buy a cheap $50 guitar, your music isn't going to sound, any good. And if you upgrade to a $1,000 guitar, it isn't going to sound any better until you learn to play it.
Right. That's right. It's a good analogy.
Yeah. Yeah, when I started playing drums 4 years ago, I bought an kind of a intermediate level Gretsch kit, and I met a guy who would end up becoming a drummer for my gal as a bass player, and she ended up forming a band down here, and he would end up being the drummer. And I ran into him, and he dropped by and sat down at my drum kit and just started shredding it. And my first words to him was, "So it's not my drum kit that sucks?" You know? And and it is, it's true. It's not about the camera. It's not about the camera body. All these digital cameras these days, same with film cameras. I mean, the beauty of the film camera is it's really just a transport mechanism for the film. It's not like a digital camera now where you've got, the quality of the sensor and all the special things it can do. It's like, no, just I want you to get the film from here over to here and have it pass in front of this little window, and then, you know, that's where the quality of the glass comes in. And the quality of the glass is critical. And I push my students, no, don't change the camera you've got until you're done with this semester, because then you're going to understand what you're looking for in a camera. And if you do anything, spend some money on some good glass to put on that thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Always buy the best lens you can afford
Mm-hmm.
because that's what's going to carry you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've still got an old Nikon D7000 that I still shoot with that I've got some good lenses for that really, really makes the image. I mean, it's only a 16 megapixel camera, but that's all you need.
Yeah. If that Fuji was still working, that would be amazing. My oldest camera is the D300 that was introduced in 2007, and it still produces decent looking images,
And the D300, I think, was Nikon's first. When they switched from the CCD sensor to the CMOS sensor, which made a
Yeah,
huge
it was
difference.
it was the first Nikon I was willing to buy. I saw the high ISO files from it, and I went, they got it. They figured it out. And that's when I switched over to Nikon fully and dumped the Fuji gear. I left the Fuji when I had my studio. I was still using it as a studio camera, and I was producing 20 by 30 canvas prints off a 12 megapixel file. So I'm always pushing my students, don't stop with the megapixel thing. But to keep this to film is, Brandon, you're shooting 4 by 5 film. I mean, that's like what, 6, 7 times bigger, 8 times bigger than a 35 millimeter negative.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something I was always trying to remind my students of is, if you shot a picture of a bird and it's this big in your viewfinder, then it's this big on the negative, and you go ahead and you put that XL enlarger, Bessie 23 enlarger all the way up to the very, very top, and you put a small piece of paper under, you still got the grain, you've still got this enlargement of of this grain. And so the bigger the negative, obviously, that's where you see these quality differences with film is format size
Mhm.
Yeah,
and development techniques.
I love the scene in the Mel Brooks movie High Anxiety where Brophy, the driver, blows up this huge image of the tiny little speck of Mel Brooks in the elevator, and seeing him work in the darkroom and doing that's kind of pretty funny. Whatever the low grain film he's using, I want to try some of that stuff. I just sent over in chat the a picture that I took with my first digital camera, which was only a 6 megapixel camera. I've had that published in multiple magazines. I've sold it as a 20 by 30 in a gallery, and never any complaints about the image quality on it. Like I said, it's a 6 megapixel camera. So, I mean, you don't need a
Yeah,
24, 47 megapixel camera, even though I use a 47 megapixel camera, I don't really need it.
Yeah, I
yeah,
fully agree. I think people get really caught up with, you know, megapixels and sense. It's really about the sensor size, just and also going back to the negative. If you compare a negative to what you have on the back of, a digital screen, a lot of times the detail will remain intact, whereas the pixels will just fall away. So a lot of the old negatives, I don't know if you guys have gone through your parents or grandparents' old photos, but those negatives still hold up over time.
yeah, yeah. And just I mean the cost factor alone, film bodies last forever. I mean, this was my first Nikon. It's a 1972. And I actually got this in 89. I was shooting Olympus and it could not handle daily photojournalism. And it was just the guts were spilling out of it. And my camera repairman pushed this across the counter to me and said, "Take it. I am sick of fixing your camera. I don't want to do it anymore. Just take this Nikon." And other than the frame counter, which hasn't worked since 1991, um, it it's a phenomenal body and it's a tank. And that's the thing is these film cameras last forever, other than some maintenance on them and getting the foam inserts replaced. Yeah. Nicormat. Yeah.
Yeah, they're heavy. I mean, these things are weapons in their own right because
Oh,
they
yeah.
are built so solidly.
Yeah.
So solidly.
I
I
walked
mean,
around Soho with this.
mhm.
I've got my Minolta XE7, which is, I mean, it's a tank. I mean, I could drop this thing on concrete and it probably wouldn't damage it at all.
Yeah.
Actually, I did drop this at the coast when I was probably 12. We went to Cannon Beach and I dropped it on the rock and it kind of
Mm.
jarred the mirror a little bit. I was devastated because my camera was broken. My dad was able to take some tweezers and just kind of get the mirror back in place, and it still works fine to this day. So.
Hmm.
I still actually use these teaching my digital class because I can tear it down. I can pull the lens off, I can pull the back off, and I can show my students this is what happens when you click the shutter. This is a lens diaphragm, this is the aperture, and this is how that looks. And I can't do that with my digital camera gear as well. And so I think being able to introduce a stripped down film camera to where they can see the mechanisms functioning helps them along in their process of putting the exposure triangle together, and understanding using these things as a creative control for your vision versus being overwhelmed by numbers.
Leica used to have something pretty cool with their R8 and R9 cameras. They had they were film cameras, but they actually had a digital back that you could get for it, the digital module R. So you could convert your film camera to a digital camera pretty easily, and then just anytime you wanted to shoot film, just take that film back off and put the regular back on, and you're got a film camera. And I think that was unfortunately something that didn't really catch on that much.
No, and there's another company out there that's trying it again. I'm not willing to go fund it. Um, but and even 20 years or so ago, there was yet another company that was still trying to do that. Um, and it's a cassette that fits into the back of a film camera and is transferring the data to inside the cassette or whatever. And it's a neat idea. And I just don't think it'll ever take off. I don't think though that it's just too far ago to worry about it with the
Yeah,
preponderance of digital cameras.
I agree. Unfortunately, I do agree with you. Um, I've got I've got a bunch of cameras. I've got a whole bunch of 42 millimeter lenses, screw mount lenses, and a bunch of old 42 millimeter mount cameras from Pentax and Yashica, and I mean they all used the same
Yeah.
um, lens mount, so they're pretty much universal. But those are always fun to go and play with as well.
And they're great for holding down papers.
Yes.
Well, I
Uh,
still don't think that film is actually going anywhere, and
No.
especially like the renewed interest in film with, a lot of the young people right now. I think people are so disillusioned with AI and technology and the speed of things that they're actually forcing themselves to slow down by going back to film.
Hmm.
And I think that's wonderful. And I would like to see a lot more of that.
And there
Yes.
are some new film manufacturers out there, which is really exciting. That there's actually, I mean, there might be quite a few going out. Like Agfa, I think, is gone, but there are some that are coming in that are brand new manufacturers.
Yeah, and Fuji's still out there. Speaking to what Liz just mentioned, I started seeing something in my digital class. Certainly in the last years of my film class when digital was becoming prevalent, so late 2000s, uh, I had a lot of students picking up film cameras, and that carried into Nolan's not my only student to start shooting film. I've had a number of students start shooting film. And when I would ask them about it, I started realizing they've never held a photo before. Everything is on their phone. All their photos are
Hmm.
right here, and I started realizing if I was going to ever get a master's degree, even though I've been teaching college for 30 years, if I was going to get a master's, I would do my thesis on the tactile factor that film presents to the younger generation. And a lot of younger photographers, because they've never held a print before, because they get this instant gratification from their digital camera or their phone, whatever, the idea of holding something and then having to take this other physical thing and put it in and wind it and go through this process and then get it developed and hold the negative and maybe even go in a darkroom and print it and see that image come up in a tray, that thing that fascinated us for the first time and held on for life with us, uh, is a new thing for them. And I have this idea that they're missing the ability to touch things.
Yep.
And and that's I think where that's this resurgence of film photography today is, I think, based solely on that premise,
Hmm.
that need.
Brent Bergherm, who I've actually had as a guest on this podcast in the past, hosts a podcast on printing photography. Not in the darkroom, but with a printer. But um, and that's what that's all about is that tactile feel of actually picking up a photo and having that printed photo in your hands as a
Mhm.
tangible object instead of just a image on a screen. And I think that's something pretty cool, and that's something definitely to listen to if you're out driving or something and trying to find something to listen to. Look up Brant Bergherm out of Walla Walla, Washington, and he's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, to some of that when I started printing, I shamefully didn't start printing a lot of my images until later on. I just kind of kept the negatives when it was film, or, when I started shooting digital, it was just on my hard drive, on my computer, but I very seldom would actually print them out. Recently, or at least when I started going to school, I made it a point. I mean, we had to, every project had to be printed out. So I started printing out some of my images, and I have my portfolio right here that I actually carry around, and it's full of these images that I took, all these portraits, and I'm like really proud of it because I can actually carry it around with me and show people, like, look,
Oh,
these are
a
my
photo.
images. Instead of doing this, all right, look at my
Yeah.
Facebook or look at my phone. You can actually see it blowing up. 13 by 19 is what I usually print them in, that size, and it's so much more effective. People appreciate it more. You
Yeah.
know.
I've got a Canon Pro 100 that I've had for about 10 years now that I still use all the time to print my photos, and it's there's just something magical about having that physical print.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was just gonna say nothing can touch the magic of seeing a print come up in a dark room.
I
That is wondrous. And
Yeah.
I think the more young photographers who take the time to experience that now through darkroom programs. I know there's a bunch of darkroom programs down in Denver still, I think, right? Colorado
Mm-hmm.
Center for Photography, CPAC, yeah, it still has darkrooms, right, Liz?
they sure do. And also there's a lot of community colleges that still offer film classes and have darkroom access, which is fantastic. And
Mm-hmm.
also, as you were saying earlier, you don't need anything super fancy. I mean, to make a pinhole camera, Brandon, you were just talking about,
Yeah.
pinhole camera. You can make a pinhole camera out of anything. A lunchbox, a shoebox. There's
Yes.
actually a phenomenal photographer in Colorado Springs by the name of Heather Olklaus, and she has made a box truck into a massive, massive pinhole camera, a mobile pinhole camera. And I mean, if you can dream about it, you can absolutely do it.
I can't remember the name of the photographer, shamefully, but we learned about this photographer who did just that. Like, he literally had a box truck, and the back of it, the door was, his pinhole, more or less. And it was incredible. I mean, the images that he produced with that thing were just incredible. Very large, too, very large prints, but beautiful. Just so sharp and clear. Yeah.
To get started, I mean, you can get these chemicals relatively cheaply.
Yeah.
And you can do a developer in a bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you research things and figure out, the proper safety things, don't get any developer in your eyeballs or anything like that.
Right, right.
But it's really easy. You don't need a ton of specialized equipment to do like a very simple like solar ray print.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And Nolan got hooked on those for a while too. I think you'll bump into some of that stuff on his website. Um, and I mean, I never had a dark room. I've had a dark room since I was 17. I mean, I haven't had a dark room in years now because I had one at the college that was amazing. And the any of the ones in my house I never had a bathroom or running water in a dark room. That's what bathtubs are for. And washing your film and stuff like that. So it is possible to very easily put together a dark room and develop it and then get it out of the fixer and go wash it in the bathtub. So that is a very doable thing. And when Colorado Mountain College abandoned the Breckenridge campus darkroom in 2010 or 11, it was actually in 2010. I spent a year of my own unpaid time getting all these Bessler 23 and Durst enlargers and developing stuff and trays and tanks into the hands of former students because I couldn't bear to see it go out the window into a dumpster. I could not do that. And I also did not take any of it myself. I mean, I took, other than I think the tanks that I came with to the program, those came back with me. I passed up gorgeous enlargers because I didn't have the space or the desire to run a dark room anymore. And that's the big issue. It is now a commitment. And I always joke we gave up all that abusive chemistry and now we irradiate our brains in front of a 32-inch monitor. So I don't know.
Oh, I mean, I always see stuff on Craigslist all the time. People getting rid of their old photo equipment because they just don't have the space or time for it. So that's,
Mhm.
a great way if anybody wants to experiment with something and doesn't have the money to invest in it, take a look on those old classifieds because there's definitely
Yeah.
stuff hanging around out there. It's better to be used than to be thrown away.
This is bad. I'm looking around my office going, where can I put that? I could. Uh, yeah. I just don't want to.
So, doing the podcast, it always, whatever the subject is of the podcast, I always get inspired to go out and do. So now I'm really inspired to go out and shoot film. Whatever the subject is, that's what um, that gets me going and gets me inspired. What gets all of you inspired to go and shoot film or shoot in just in general?
Working a dead-end construction job. I'm the only one laughing, but let me explain. So I've been doing, photography for the most part has mostly been a side hustle for me, just because that hasn't always been fully self-sufficient. I have 3 children, I have dogs, it hasn't paid the bills enough to where I can only do photography. So I've always done construction, heavy labor jobs, and things like that. The older that I get, the more it's pushing me. That's, as I mentioned earlier, to go back to school. I went back to school, got my photography degree. Now I'm going back even further to get my bachelor's in business because I just want to be done with it. And I just want to take pictures for the rest of my life. That's what I want to do. So I just want to get out of the 9 to 5 world and take pictures. That's, you know, as odd as that may be to an answer, for an answer to your question, that's kind of what pushes me to better myself and to keep taking pictures and keep shooting every single day so that, maybe I take that right picture, that one picture that gets noticed or gets published somewhere, or, a college or a university decides to hire me to do their sports photography, things like this. That's mostly what pushes me, I'd say.
I get it. I do IT is my main source of income, and it
Hmm.
is stressful. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
37 and look at all my gray hairs. A lot of people assume that I'm older than that because of my gray hairs, but yeah, it's stressful to do IT, and it really is something to be able to go do photography after work, and it just is like taking a deep breath and
Yeah.
really good for me mentally, I think.
Hmm.
Doing photography full time. I've been doing photography full time for many years. And I don't want to say I kind of have the opposite problem, but because photography is my life and my passion and my job, sometimes I get caught up in I'm so exhausted, I don't want to take another picture.
Sure.
So, or if I don't have a camera, that's a vacation to me sometimes.
Hmm.
So for me, as a full-time working professional, it's how do I get inspired to do things again? And I think what we're talking about right now is going back to film actually is inspiring for me
Hmm.
because that's something that is just purely selfish.
Hmm.
Uh, and I will have the time to experiment and to play around and to sort of, I kind of miss the days that I was in school because you had a project, you had a lesson, you had like, okay, here's our project for this week. And if you don't give yourself a project, it doesn't matter if you're in school or not, but once you stop learning, once you stop growing, that's when the stagnation hits. And so I have to challenge myself to not get stagnant. And just like you, Jeff, I want to go out now and experiment more with film photography
Hmm.
because that's going to spark greater projects and that's going to just improve me as a photographer in general. Like if you can master film, you can master anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really getting the urge to just start shooting film again. And I actually just got a bunch of film. It was at least 4 years old. I got processed. Most of the Holga stuff went right into the trash, which is common with the Holga. And then some 35 millimeter stuff from Alex's first band that she was in down here 4 years ago. It was the Groove Wranglers funk band, and they would rehearse here, and I would go out. I was really just beginning on the drums at that point, so nobody was asking me to play. And and so I would just go out and shoot film images of them. But I again, same with Liz of having done this full time for a living for a long time. I'm semi-retired now, and I'm still shooting jobs as they come available. And again, that's client-based stuff, meeting the needs of the client. It's not, it's creative, but it's with an eye toward the income, you know. Um, and so that's where I've got a little Fuji X Pro 2 rangefinder digital mirrorless, and I have a handful of lenses for that. And the majority of my photography now is done with that camera. The Nikons come out when there's a paycheck for the most part, or if I'm shooting wildlife or something. But that Fuji, it's my poor man's Leica. And so it's always around my neck. It's always with me. And I love light on faces. And so that's what brings me joy, as opposed to, right now we're having a rippingly gorgeous sunset out there. Um, and I've got 14,000 foot peaks a mile away to the east of me, and I suck at nature photography. I'm not into it. It
Yeah.
doesn't give me the rush that I want when I press the shutter. And I do it, and I'm kind of a hack at it. I'm kind of a photojournalist about it. It's very opportunistic. But my joy and my thrill with photography is still light on faces. Nothing gets me going like that. And so I still love shooting that. It took me into my 40s to be able to just enjoy a sunset for the sake of it, and not feel a rainbow and not freak out and literally be stressed by how much beauty I was witnessing. And I'm freaking out. I need to shoot this. I've got to go shoot this. And 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 then in my 40s, that started to bleed off of me, where I could just enjoy a moment for myself. So I think that's an important thing to learn too, is to actually put down the camera and allow yourself to be in the moment.
Hmm.
So photos end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Going back to Liz, what you had said earlier about like getting caught up in the chaos and the stress and the pressure and all that, I definitely kind of resonate with that to a degree, because one of the things that I'm committed to as a photographer, one of my gigs, my regular gigs, is the Cody Night Rodeo. If you're not familiar with it, you are familiar with it. Great, yeah, Cody,
Yeah.
Wyoming. I live right outside of Cody. Cody, Wyoming is the rodeo capital of the world. So when I first moved out here a few years ago, I had my eye set on it immediately, and I said, I have to get in there. I have to take pictures of that rodeo. And literally everyone I spoke to said, you're not. They already have a photographer. She's very adamant about that being her arena, and they do not let any other photographers in there. Well, long story short, I saw an ad on Facebook. This particular photographer was she was hosting a rodeo photography class, and it was a 3-day thing over the weekend. And the first 2 days were just learning the basics of photography, exposure triangle, things like this. And then on the third day, you had the chance to shoot the rodeo. So I took the class, I paid the fee and everything. And then when it came time to shooting the rodeo, there was about a dozen or so people in the class, and they all stood right outside of the arena on the fence and shot in the arena. They shot the show, the actual rodeo itself. Now, me, when I shoot sports, because I've been shooting sports for years because my kids grew up playing baseball and football. They're all athletes. I learned years ago that I prefer shooting behind the scenes. I like shooting in the dugout or on the sidelines and things like this, right? I want to shoot the emotion of the game. I want to see the expressions on people's faces when their team just scored a goal, things like that. Okay. So that's what I did at the rodeo. I shot behind the shoots. I was shooting everyone getting ready, getting their chaps on, getting their boots on. And what ended up happening was the photographer, she liked my images so much that she showed the owner of the rodeo, the people, the family that owns and runs the rodeo, and they hired me. They hired me on the spot because they liked my images. So anyway, all this to say, this is my third year at the rodeo, and that particular photographer just moved to Germany. Okay. So they gave me her job as the arena photographer, and the pressure is so much because I went from shooting like about on average 100 to 125 behind the scenes images per night, right? Um, and I would do it like 2, maybe 3 nights a week type thing. It was like a part-time gig. Well, now they want me there all the time. And because I'm in the arena shooting everything, the barrel racing, the tie down, all the different events, I average like 500 images per night. And the pressure of having to edit those images every single night, or every night that I'm there at least, and have them posted and ready to go, within a day or two, it's a lot. And it makes it feel like a job, and it kind of sucks the passion out of it a little bit.
It is a job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go shoot a wedding, man. It's,
Oh yeah, I've shot plenty of weddings.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'd rather face a steer.
Me too.
Uh,
The
When it
grass is
comes,
always greener, where people are like, oh, all I want to do is just photography full time.
yeah,
And then realizing that no matter what it is, whether you're a professional athlete or a musician or whatever, you can still love what you do, but it's still a job.
sure.
And to just sort of recognize that, you still have the same things that you would with any job. You have burnout. You
Mhm.
have to just deal with, different visions creatively with time crunches, and to sort of save a little bit for yourself so that you don't get burned out.
Yeah,
yeah.
And to like hold on to that joy of
yeah,
photography. That's what really drew us into photography in the first place, is the magic and the
sure.
coolness of the images. And so like not losing that spark and that
Yeah.
joy, I think, is really key.
Yeah,
That I found that with shooting weddings. I started shooting weddings in '96, and it was all film. And so there was that pressure. And people would watch me work at the wedding and come up to me going, "Oh my God, these images are going to be amazing. I watched you work all day, and you're phenomenal. And you were seeing all these other." And I'm like shrugging my shoulders, going, "I don't know. I got 24 rolls of film in the bag. I don't know. Some of it flies to CPQ in Tennessee for processing. So it's on an airplane. And then all the 35 millimeter stuff was going to my local lab. Thankfully, never once suffered a film break in the development process. So I never lost a frame.
wow.
And that in and of itself, and now you're looking at like a 2-week period from the time you shoot and send off the film to when you get it back. And that's a pressure for sure too. But man, when I was in the viewfinder, yeah, it was a lot of work. Yeah, you had to be there, you had to show up, you had to be on. But the stuff, like life in the viewfinder for me is a safe place. That is my therapy is being safe in the viewfinder. And even, stupidly as a photojournalist, I used to shoot ridiculously dangerous stuff and horrific stuff and never feel threatened, which was, ridiculous. And I think the earliest thing I remember shooting was in 80 84. I I shot a tanker that rolled over and exploded on Interstate 17 in Phoenix. And I knew coming into it that I was the only photographer coming from the north. The papers, the Gazette and the Republic, were going to come from the south. They were not going to be able to get there. And so I parked a quarter mile away and I ran up the highway. And I'm on the line with the firefighters. And I didn't give it really another thought. And I at that time, I remember this woman showed up and she was taking pictures and asked one of the firefighters, how close can we get before it's dangerous? And they kind of laughed and I laughed because it's like, you're not going to feel it if that thing goes up. That's how close you are. You are not going to live.
Right.
And me as a photojournalist, the more of that I could experience, the cooler life was. Um, and and this idea of being safe in the viewfinder, I do still find that emotionally now. Everything in my world is okay and makes sense when I'm in the viewfinder. I will continue to seek that out for the rest of my life, as long as I can.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing you were saying, Brandon, about the quantity of images you're taking for the rodeo now.
Yeah.
That is a huge advantage of going digital. When I was 16, I took a 2 week trip to Germany and I took about 30 rolls of slide film. Going through all those slides after the trip was a daunting task.
I bet.
Using a digital camera to go through your pictures and cull them is so much quicker and easier and such an advantage over film. If you're going to be shooting a huge quantity, then there's no question in my mind digital's the way to go.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But, bringing it back to film, there is nothing like saying I have 36 images.
Yeah.
And the irony of the best one is always that last half a frame at the end of the roll that got cut off.
Hmm.
Liz is going, yeah, that thing.
I find, you make it count too when you have that situation where, you only have 36 images. So one thing that's common for me when I shoot film is I always have an older, like vintage. It's either usually my Canon EOS 650 or my Pentax. I have a Pentax. I have like two or three Pentax K1000s. And I always bring them with me to all of my shoots, whether it's the rodeo, a wedding, a family shoot, senior pics. And I'll do the overwhelming majority of the images with I have a Canon R5. That's my digital, my mirrorless camera, right? But I'll take two, maybe three images with my film camera per shoot. And then at the end of the month or, whenever the roll is done, I'll develop them. And then I have like a little collection of two or three images per shoot that I did that month. And that's kind of like something that you look forward to, at the end of the month is developing that role and checking out all your
Yeah.
shoots that you did that month on a film camera. It's pretty fun.
There's nothing like that anticipation. It's exhilarating to have that anticipation to wait for your film to come back and see what's on it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm going to be loading a roll of film in my Nikons. I'll pick one and figure it out. But yeah, I haven't done that in a while, so I'm looking forward to actually. I'm inspired now to shoot some film. So
Me too.
Yeah.
Um, before we wrap things up, where can everybody go to find everybody's work? Liz, you have a website?
So I do have a website. My website is elizabethcopan.com, or you can also find me on Instagram, which has links to everything and is updated a lot more regularly. And that is at Instagram, I am Studio Copan, StuDioCopan.
And Brandon, I know last time you were on the podcast, you didn't have a website yet, but you were working on it. Is that up and going now?
No, not yet. It's getting close. I'm using Pixie so I'm still figuring it out. But I do obviously have socials. I have Instagram. It's Brandon Luis Photography. Luis is spelled Luis. So Brandon_Luis_photography. And then on Facebook, it's Brandon Lewis Photography LLC. And then I have a TikTok for my photos as well, Brandon Lewis Photography.
And how about you, Matthew? Where can we go to look at your work?
mattlitphoto.com, mattlitphoto.com, and coloradodogphotography.com for my dog specialized work. And my Instagram handle has just gotten too long, but you'll be able to see some of that or link to it from the other two websites.
And my website is www.wyophotos.us. That's wyophotos.us. And my Instagram and Facebook are linked up from there, so you can find me on anywhere from my website. It was great having all of you on today. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you. Always a pleasure.
This was the Rocky Mountain Photography Show. Please visit us online at RockyMountainPhotoshow.com. Thank you for listening and have a great day.